Welcome to this episode of Mercy Can Stop Her. I am your host, Judith Kambia Obatusa, JKO. Last week, we talked about the painful side of authenticity. We talked about what it means to remain true to yourself, even when who you are doesn't fit into what the dominant group, into the expectation of the dominant group. And in that same spirit of authenticity, I just want to talk to you about something that I've been struggling with about this podcast. I would love for you to give me your opinions. I have a link in the show notes where you can send me a message directly. So please, I'll appreciate your response. This podcast started as a labor of love for women in difficult, intimate relationships. Those women who are in those relationships and they're not able to leave. Those women who are judged negatively for that. The assumption is you should leave and leave now. Leave because there's free government housing for you, which is not totally true because government cannot take the safety. So where you have social safety nets, the net is not wide enough. We're talking like 80% of women in difficult intimate relationships are unable to leave for various reasons. And there are a lot of reasons that a woman can be in those relationships. And the truth is that even for some of us that judge those women, we can tell a woman to leave, but what can we do to support her? When she needs you, are you able to show up for her? Do you begin to see her as to reliance? Do you even disrespect her or treat her with this, treat her differently because of what she's going through? Those are the issues. It's easy for us to say those things, but can we back up our suggestions with support? I'm not God. I'm not the government. It's not the government's job to be human. We are the ones who make a difference in each other's life. But that's the main reason. So because there's this gap, you can leave a situation, but you don't leave it in your mind because you're carrying burden, you're carrying different things. And there are women in these situations and they need support. So my desire was that this podcast will encourage those women to remind them that they still have worth. They are not finished because of their situation, that something beautiful can still grow in a hard place. Even in a rocky land, flowers still bloom. Some tenacious flowers still bloom. In the desert, there are still beautiful flowers. Tenacious they are, resilient they are, but they still bloom. So it is possible. I have seen women in difficult situations still raise children, still build something that's meaningful, and still move forward with strength. Not because the situation was good, but because grace met them in those situations. It has been the heart behind this podcast. That has been my reason. I just want them to have a space where they can hear encouragement, where they can also be an encouragement. But since my daughter's passing, something else has been weighing heavily on my mind. When my daughter was alive, I used to have this it was like a series. I did it for a short time on Facebook called Tough Love. And I talked about, I did it not many times, it was very few times on Facebook, some videos. And I used to talk about tough love, loving children, being a loving parent. Many times people tell you tough love is to show them, give them rules, and that's what I used to believe until I discovered that love, true love, should not be based on behavior. A child should be loved even when they are struggling. In fact, when a child is struggling is the time they need you to show them that you love them the most. That is the time when you are going to get softer than you've been before. That is a time when you will avoid the fight as much as possible and insisting they must do it this way. It is. And I used to talk about things like this. And since my daughter's passing, my heart has been around the impact of our lives and our decisions on our children. How does a toxic home affect a child? How does stress in a mother's life affect the child that's watching her? How do our pain, the pain we're in, the tension in the environment, being in survival mode, and the emotional strain that they grow up in shape the children that we love? These questions have been sitting heavily on my mind, and I keep thinking about them because many times we women, we're so busy trying to get by in these situations that we don't fully see what our children may be carrying too. Not because we don't love them, but because of what we're in. And it's not because we're bad mothers. So we're overwhelmed, we're stretched, we're wounded, we're trying to keep going. And you know, we can become super irritable because of our stress. We're under pressure all the time. It is hard. But I'm drawn to remind us about this because the most precious gift that we have are our children. The greatest achievement of our lives are our children. And for us to be so overwhelmed by every other thing, that those things begin to impact the outcomes for our children, it tugs at my heart. I, I am torn. I still deeply believe that women in difficult relationships deserve support, encouragement, and the language to strengthen them. But I also feel strongly that we need to talk about our children, about the, about the emotional impact of our lives on them, about what can happen when painful environments go unaddressed. So I'm really in a bind. I know I mentioned it, I kind of mentioned it. There was an episode I did about legacy. But my heart just keeps tugging at me, mainly because time is going. In a couple of days, I'm going to turn 55. I just want to pour my heart out and hope that there's a woman out there who will make a better decision, who will not make the mistakes that I made in my children's lives, who will not jump into situations that will harm her for years, for generations. You see, the impact of our lives goes from generation to a generation. So we cannot afford to take these things lightly. So today, I'm asking you, and I need your help. I don't know whether I should focus on what we've always talked about, just integrate this into our conversations because these things have impact. And I don't want women without children to feel left out. I don't want women in hard relationships to feel judged. But I also, like I said, time is running out. I've lived longer than I may live. I've lived like more of the life I have than what I have left. So I just need you to help me. What do you think? Should we hold both conversations? Should we continue encouraging women in difficult relationships while also talking more about children and the emotional impact of these situations? I would really, really love to hear from you. There's a link in the show notes, I said, for messaging. You can message me. I really would appreciate you if you can just send me a message. Thank you so much for listening and for allowing me to be honest. And I also want to thank you for those who have been subscribing to this podcast and who have followed me for years. Thank you. And just before we go, I just want to remind you again, even in a hard place, your life still matters. Like I said, flowers grow in the desert. They grow out of rocky ground. So you gotta continue to invest in your healing. It matters. And the truth is that your yesterday and even your today does not mean that your future is going to be the same way that it is right now. If you're in a painful place, the future is still bright. If yesterday was hard, the future is still bright. And I want you to remember that. Thank you so much for listening. See you next time.